Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine Podcast Radio. You're about to listen to an episode of Tech Done Different podcast with Ted Harrington. Do you follow the pack or challenge the status quo? Join Ted as he explores how to succeed by going against conventional wisdom. You'll hear leaders in technology and security tell stories about how they achieve their success by doing things differently. Knowledge is power. Now, more than ever.
CrowdSec, the collaborative and open source cybersecurity solution. Analyze behaviors, respond to attacks, and share signals across the community for free. Let's make the internet safer together. Learn more at crowdsec.net.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Tech Done Different. As always, I'm your host, Ted Harrington. And with me here today is our special guest, Ria Cheruvu. She is the AI ethics lead architect at the Intel Corporation. Ria, welcome to the show. Excited to have you.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
So you and I were chatting the other day about artificial intelligence, and we really got grand on this discussion we're having. We started talking about its impact on society and everything. And where I wanted to start our discussion, this is certainly an area of expertise for you, where you spend a lot of your effort and energy, is this question about artificial intelligence. And I want to know from your perspective, is AI at the forefront of the way that different domains across just human civilization, or however you want to answer that, are interconnected? And can you explain that? And then I'd like to dig into whether this is a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So my bias as an AI practitioner is that the answer to that question is a solid yes. AI is really at the forefront of all of these critical technology domains that are impacting human societies. Whether it be blockchain, the metaverse, I think, a couple of these new technologies that are coming up that are related to these domains, as well as in general, some of the foundational infrastructures that are woven into our society, like interacting with mobile devices, smart cities, the cloud. I think all of these are continuing to be some great landing zones for AI technology. So we're seeing this really proliferate into multiple different areas and in unique types of ways. You can see different types of AI algorithms and models and the different data points that they consume. And that gives us a vastly different and broad perspective on AI and what it means for human civilization.
I love the idea of starting a question about technology in a show about technology, and we're instantly talking about human civilization. So
yes.
let's dig into that. So there are certainly enthusiasts of many different domains across tech who might argue that other thing is what is making such a significant impact on society. What is it about artificial intelligence that is so unique or special or societally changing?
Right, yes. And I think that this plays to a very interesting dynamic and also some of the hype surrounding the technology. And the way to phrase this, which is probably an incorrect way of approaching it at first, but I want to get it out of the picture first, is that, AI has always been established as something that could potentially mimic the human brain or some of the functionalities that we have when it comes to decision making. Now, is that true today? Definitely not. There's a lot more steps that we need to take in order to make AI algorithms more robust, more smart, and essentially and less dumber, and being able to understand what are the different scenarios that these AI algorithms can work in, and when are they able to augment, human intelligence through paradigms like hybrid intelligence. But I'd say that the reason why AI is really at the forefront is extending from this idea of mimicry and is really targeted around what AI is doing. And what do I mean by this? So AI is a consumer of data, very similar to how humans behave. And I think as the types of data grow for the inputs that you can provide to AI models, we're also offering a lot more control to these types of algorithms. Today, you may have your voice assistant on your phone being able to make calls or send emails for you. Tomorrow, you might see an AI algorithm being put in control of, a small digital IoT environment or a larger one where it may be able to control digital traffic signs or similar types of items. So the consumption of data and then the actuation, I think, are really what are putting AI at the forefront of technologies that impact society radically.
So you addressed, I think, the unspoken question that maybe many people are having is AI going to kill us someday, right? Are the robots coming for us? And I think I heard you say no, or at least not anytime soon.
Yes, I love answering this question because it just leads to a bunch of different interesting perspectives. So my personal opinion on this is that, two-pronged. The first is, yes, I think AI is not anywhere near having the issues that are depicted in science fiction. We've got AI overlords that are taking over countries that are, essentially having completely different values compared to humanity, and one vague command from an innocent human being is leading to destruction. Now, having said that, the flip side of the coin is that there is a much more dangerous application of AI that is already, having these current underpinnings and is moving forward. And that is the humans driving the AI technology and the value alignment there. So now we're seeing that, different AI systems can be used to ally with particular governments or particular philosophies, and then amplify those types of perspectives or the destruction that could be caused associatedly. Now, there are benefits to the solution, but what I'm trying to say here is it's a very careful balance, and AI overlords are a farther reality than human overlords that are being able to leverage AI systems and kind of amplify the types of things that they want to see in society.
Is what you're talking about, does that include the issue that many people talk about where bias or even racism that is inherently human is now being essentially built into the way that these AI algorithms work?
Yes, exactly. Issue? Yeah, definitely. I think it all kind of lops into this category. Problems regarding, not being able to understand what's going on within state-of-the-art AI models. Transparency is a very big issue in this space. Fairness, where you're seeing unfair outcomes towards marginalized populations, and this being really exacerbated by different AI technologies. And you might also have other concerns regarding environmental impact of AI systems, or going back to kind of this robustness type of concept where, your AI model might be performing horribly, because you haven't gathered enough data. And now you need to go back and invest more money in order to make it more performant. And, the questions that you start to ask here is, when do you draw the line? And when are you relying too much on AI technology compared to, having a human going ahead and doing the work instead? So it's a very interesting balance, hybrid intelligence, human-centered AI, ethical and responsible AI, all of these different domains are kind of being brought into the argument here, along with philosophy and psychology.
So if these inherently problematic traits of human beings are now being infused into these algorithms, such as, bias we have towards people, other nations, other sexual orientations, other genders, whatever. If these biases are inherently human and we aren't really able to solve them societally to begin with, how do we solve it in this emerging technology so that we're not just replicating the ugly parts of the human condition?
Yes, and I think the perfect solution, or the ideal solution towards this, is, of course, to have a combination of societal related recommendations, guidelines, and regulations to get this going, as well as the technological solutions. So there's been a very interesting concept that's been proposed now called techno-solutionism, and many others surrounding it that are saying, this perspective that toolkits are enough is not enough or sufficient, and it can be a dangerous way of looking at things. Now, having said that, when you look at it from a technology provider point of view, the first step that I believe, in my personal opinion, that we can take is, what are the technologies or mechanisms that could potentially help support the analysis and essentially looking more deeply at the consequences of this systems. And, coming out of that, the next step really is, how do I get to better documentation or transparency of AI systems? I personally prioritize explainability for this reason, because if I could have this type of a manual associated with an AI model that will tell me about its failure modes, and the practitioners behind it have done a pretty detailed analysis, so now I'm able to understand what are the shortcomings of the model, then societally and from a regulatory perspective, I might be more prepared in order to address these specific issues. And I think that is one of the next steps that we can take, really starting from the transparency point of view. More research and development is always a good thing, but we need to kind of align it with some of these values related to ethics, which is an emerging trend in the industry and for a very important reason.
Are ethics a universally understood concept?
Yeah, I think definitely to a certain extent. And now we're getting into philosophical territory.
Yeah, we sure are.
Yeah. And I think there are some very interesting definitions of value alignment and morality if we look at how these are shared across, humans and AI. And I love the opportunities that I get to say humans so many times in these conversations, when typically, we would kind of, we would segment ourselves further. But I think, as a species as a whole, or a civilization, I think it's just very interesting to see how this dynamic plays out. But I think there are always some common tenets of morality, or essentially some principles that we might all follow, that we expect AI systems to follow as well. And again, it starts to get very blurry if you bring in things like kindness and, the trolley problem, which is incredibly, I think, very prevalent in the space. It's mentioned almost all the time in AI courses when it comes to moral dilemmas. But oftentimes situations can get even more complicated than that. But yes, I am a firm believer that we do have, across all societies, different religions and similar, some core principles of morality that we can embed as part of AI systems. And the challenge here is getting to align on those.
So for anyone listening or watching this who isn't familiar with the trolley problem, could you explain it in brief?
Yeah, so I think there are multiple variations of it, but the ethical dilemma that I'm most familiar with is essentially, you've got 2 train tracks and a controller on the side, and you've got a train that's, in the way, and you're kind of essentially the one who can control, which track is the train going to be switched to? Should it continue on its original trajectory or switch over to the other track? And you've got, 4 people or a group of people on one track, and then you've got one person that you're connected to or personally on another. And so the question is, how would you switch, what track would you switch the train's trajectory to? And then there are multiple variations of the problem. You could replace this person that you're connected to with, a pet, or an animal that you're not aware of. And then the question is, would you value the life of an animal over a human, or the life of someone you know over someone you don't, or the life of one over the majority? So multiple different questions that are coming out of that. But I think as a society, we can all agree that we would rather not be in that problem in the first place. So there are definitely a couple of approaches or even just mindsets that we have that I think can be collectively shared. And if they can't be, that's a societal problem. But from a technology perspective, at least we can help get there with some honest analyses of the technology.
We've been talking about this from the perspective of how do we make sure that it's almost like human to machine is what we're talking about. How do we make sure that as we are creating machines, we don't create them in a bad way? But maybe there's something to be said for the reverse happening too, which is to say, because we are trying to think about how do we make good machines, it forces us to think about the human condition differently too, right? Because most people in there, except for ethicists and philosophers, probably don't think about that trolley problem ever. But now if you're working on AI and it comes up, anyone listening to this episode is probably like, well, what would I do in that situation? And that's a good thing, right? Having to ask those questions.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think the influence that AI research has on our understanding can be limited in certain domains, but it can also be kind of enlightening in others. And the reason why I say this is that when you're narrowing yourself kind of down into the inner workings of computer science or in general AI systems, it is very easy to get stuck in the weeds there, and essentially have trouble coming out. And I think I have a problem with a couple of reinforcement learning approaches. I definitely don't have problems with responsible AI. I work in the space, but with reinforcement learning approaches, for that reason. And what I mean by this is, there are some excellent research domains within reinforcement learning in order to get AI models to learn from their environment and get rewarded based on their actions. But now, there are some reward functions that are defined as part of that, like, curiosity-based learning, where, you're kind of promoting the model or giving it more rewards for being able to interact with this environment and explore areas that it hasn't seen before. And now all of these different terminologies and concepts have come into play, exploration, exploitation trade-off, like curiosity-driven, reward and reinforcement learning. But it's very easy to get into those and start optimizing the individual hyperparameters without thinking about how that reflects back on the way that we learn. So all of this is to say that there can be a disconnect, especially between, some of these psychology domains and then the way that learning is implemented in AI systems. If we take a step back and look at it holistically, I think there are many connections to be made, and that's where the insight really comes in terms of, okay, I'm designing this really specific RL algorithm that works for this particular domain, that learns just like this, just like a human. But what are the exact corollaries that I'm making here, and what are the tricks that I'm putting into an AI system that a human doesn't have, and what are the implications of that?
So would you consider yourself a technologist or an ethicist?
Definitely a technologist, and I would not claim to, again, I think, it does rely a lot on formal training and being able to have a keen eye to align on these different values. So as a technologist, though, I think I find myself as an advocate of the work that ethicists are doing, and being able to, again, kind of support that, make sure that it is prioritized in most cases over the technology, is one of the objectives that I've had. And I've heard a lot by many different people in different spaces as, I was going about ethical AI technology work, that, just because you can do it doesn't mean you shouldn't. And I think it's a voice that is a concern shared by many. And the first step to that is looking at the ethical related implications. Then we get to, legality and, regulations, and then we're getting to the technology. And this is my personal view on the progression. Some may say, okay, it starts from with regulation, then it gets to ethics, and then it gets to technology. But, I think starting with those core set of values and then moving down the stack makes a lot more sense.
It reminds me of Jurassic Park. Jeff Goldblum's character, he brings up, he's like, how did he phrase it? It was something like, when we figured out that we could, we never stopped to ask if we should. He's talking about, replicating dinosaurs or whatever. So that's sort of what you're saying along those lines, that question needs to be asked. Should we do it?
Precisely. Yes. And I think lots of awesome new AI concepts that are out there that have many more issues. If we're on the topic of AI overlords, like deep fakes are a realistic issue today, where you can't really trust the content that you're seeing. And what I've been looking into is like hypothetical scenarios as well as the reverse. So today we ask ourselves, can we trust AI systems? Do they meet certain criteria? Are they explainable? Are they fair enough for us to use them in our daily lives? And then we're starting to get to a point in the security domain where we ask the reverse, and the AI system and its associated processes are now supposed to ask, can I trust this human that's approaching me, who I don't know is a malicious user or an innocent user, and what they're going to do with the system? So many interesting dynamics. Deepfakes is an example of, can we trust AI or not? And I think security issues are an example of how, can we trust humans or not? And each of them have to earn their own trust in this type of paradigm.
Well, this is definitely the paranoid security guy in me saying this, but you should not trust the human. I can solve that problem for you right there. Make them earn it, just like you said. We have to assume hostility first, and then trust is earned. So for the people who are listening to all the insights that you're sharing right now, and they are themselves either directly building something, or they're responsible for a team building something, or they're working with a partner, a vendor, whatever, who's building something for them. What should they do with this information?
Yeah, I think the practical implementation of just translating what I mentioned and everything that is described as part of the domain and then putting it into practice can be extremely challenging. And it is easy to say, very, very hard to implement, because you need to identify what is right for you. And a lot of these challenges will start to come in when you think about what even is AI. Because today, when we talk about artificial intelligence, we're most likely meaning these state-of-the-art neural network or deep learning models that are, taking in a lot of compute. They need a lot of data to make these predictions. But now we're starting to see, and I think academia has been a wonderful driver of this, these new approaches that are being introduced and adopted by industry that are coming under these machine learning and data science domains. And some of them have been there since a long time. You can think back to, your very basic linear and logistic regression models, support vector machines, some of these very early on models, I'm not too sure about the timelines here, but essentially almost equivalent to like the creation of the early deep learning types of models with multi-layer perceptrons. And now these earlier versions are considered to be more interpretable. Sure, they're not as performant as the state of the art, but they definitely make more sense. They may be easier to implement. They may require less compute. So, considering all of this and then how do you map ethics into it, I think it can be definitely challenging. The one recommendation I would have is to essentially create like a benchmarking template. This is what I like to do personally as well. It's kind of like a technological readiness evaluator, where for each of these AI ethics related points or items, or any of these problems in the space, you're able to kind of identify and pull them down and see, is this really relevant for the models and the use case I'm considering, and go through each of them. And you need to customize that accordingly.
Gotcha. Okay, so help me paint some hypotheticals. We're going to pull out our crystal ball right now.
Okay.
I want to ask about a good one and a bad one. So let's say 10 years from now, the current trajectory that the field of artificial intelligence is on continues on the same trajectory. 10 years from now, what is a great, beautiful thing that's going to happen because of the work that's being done today? And if it continues over the next 10 years, like how will the world be different because of artificial intelligence?
This is an interesting question. I think I am very optimistic that the responsible AI technologists and ethicists and the legal folks who are driving this are going to get the technology to a point where we can trust it. So for me, an ideal future and like a feature for AI systems 10 years from now is being trustworthy and ethical. You're able to interface with technologies with almost no concern. Of course, I understand that, it's too optimistic to consider that there might be no concerns with using AI technology, but you're able to interface with the technology, you're able to stream your private data, and it's able to help you with multiple tasks, whether it be, your healthcare analysis, or, smart cities, self-driving cars, or, even smart shopping. You're able to do it and use AI models in order to help the way that you live, improving quality of life. So that's an ideal outcome.
Yeah, that's a great one. I mean, that bumper sticker right there, AI improves outcomes, improves quality of life. I love that. So let's ask the question in the reverse now, or the opposite, I guess, of what I was just asked. So 10 years from now, what is a bad thing that would happen if the ethicists and people like you are not able to keep this on the right track?
Right. Well, I think two outcomes could really come out of this. And the first is something that is already prevalent today, and that is shutting down the technology. And I think I am definitely for this approach, because if you can't get an AI system to behave in a way that is expected and does not meet some of these criteria, although it can be disheartening for multiple technology providers who invested a lot into the solution's development and its deployment, the best solution is to shut it down if it has a very adverse impact to society. And it is enabling all sorts of bad and unethical use cases. But I think if it kind of goes on further, there is a flip side to that ideal scenario that I described that I think will rise, a new wave of concerns. And that is really something that I like to call unconventional design considerations, where, I previously mentioned as part of security, where, you have problems with trusting users and similar. I think that paradigm is going to come into play like 5 to 10 years from now, most likely long term, where now you're kind of stuck with a zero trust architecture for your AI system. And, you've designed it in a way that, okay, I'm going to give autonomy to my users, but I'm also not going to trust them. And now you have these users that are trying to trick the AI model to get the outcomes that they want. So now people are more educated about AI. They have the transparency related documents and items, and you have this new wave of usage of AI that you can't tell is deception or is real. And I like to assign this for 10 years from now, but if it comes even sooner, it might, and we definitely need to be prepared for it.
Love it. So we've been talking almost exclusively about the ethical side of this topic area. What about the scientific side? What are the things that we should be talking about when it comes to artificial intelligence as a matter of science?
Yes, and I think here, there are a couple of emerging trends in this space. I think cognitive computing is definitely one of them, where we are kind of considering how we can improve these AI algorithms in a way that may, again, be inspired from biomimicry or just for optimization purposes. So if I'm looking at it from a pure CS perspective, what I might start to look at is knowledge graphs or optimized data storages for machine learning models and AI models in order to get them to be better performant. From a science perspective, I'm starting to look at how I can translate some of this domain expertise into machine learning models. And now I think there's a lot of focus being placed on probabilistic models and causality and other areas of research where you're able to start to incorporate domain expertise or knowledge coming in from some of these domains like healthcare into your machine learning model and then use it accordingly. Some of these are very early stage, but what I predict is that there's going to be a very interesting intersection between using science to create better AI models and then AI models being used to create and provide better scientific outcomes for different domains.
Mm. That's really fascinating. So for the people who are maybe more interested in this, the scientific side of this discussion, what should they do? What should they go back to their organizations with? And how do we make sure that the science continues to continue its beautiful trajectory to that, outcome of improving lives we talked about 10 years from now?
Yeah, I think one of the best outcomes, I think it just gets back to education, being able to understand what exactly is going on within your domain. And I think all scientists and practitioners of AI technology, for both use cases I mentioned, whether you are looking at it from scientific improvements towards AI algorithms or AI being applied for some of these scientific domains, all of us go through a review of what is the current state of the art and how we can improve. And I think kind of nestling in these concerns there, being able to identify the exact improvements of AI models based off of what you have currently is key. And that goes back to this technological readiness or technical readiness benchmark that I'm mentioning, where when you're creating a AI system or you have a scientific application and you want to bring AI in, if you can start to identify where are the points that might be problematic for myself as a developer or a practitioner, as a user, as a customer, as a regulator, and then start to weave in the technical components that are necessary, this is the best way to proceed. And I think some listeners of this audience may be familiar with some of these technologies that are starting to come out there, like data processing and storage, as I mentioned, with knowledge graphs, monitoring and auditability related technologies, as well as versioning. These types of things that can help you with your workflows as well as your users and the people who will interact with the technology.
I love it. Well, as our time comes to a close here, what have I not asked you that I should have asked, that we should have talked about in the context of this particular topic?
I think we covered a lot of topics here around, the science, practical implementation of AI systems, and the ethics. And I shared my personal opinion on, some items that, I'm hypothesizing. But yeah, I think maybe one of the unanswered questions of the domain in total is, artificial intelligence and the metaverse. It's now a big thing because we talked about overlord related situations as well. So maybe I think a quick point from my perspective on some of these emerging technologies like blockchain, AI, Bitcoin, and the metaverse. I definitely think that as the hype for AI may start to fade, we're starting to understand the shortcomings of this technology. It is absolutely critical to continue the evaluation of these models in relation to some of these new trends. I think eventually we might start to see blockchain marketplaces for AI models where you can, kind of sell different types of configurations or hyperparameters. And of course, the risks associated with AI will continue to grow and proliferate through these use cases. So having a critical thinking perspective and a keen eye towards this is really important. So that's maybe our way forward when we start to look at some of these new fields and how AI relates back to them, as well as older domains from which, psychology, philosophy, and all of these things that from the sciences that we talked about would start to come in.
I love it. There is a sign on the wall behind you that says, "Never stop learning." And my brain is overflowing with ideas from you right now. So thank you so much for all the ideas and insights that you shared. It's been amazing. Thanks for being on the show, Ria.
Thank you. It was awesome to be here. Thank you, Ted.
For everybody listening, if you want to learn more about what Ria's up to or to request to appear on the podcast yourself, just go to tedharrington.com/podcast, and we'll catch you next time.
CrowdSec, the collaborative and open source cybersecurity solution. Analyze behaviors, respond to attacks, and share signals across the community for free. Let's make the internet safer together. Learn more at crowdsec.net.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Tech Done Different podcast with Ted Harrington. If you learned something new and this conversation made you think, then share itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.